TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcasting from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Israel reacts to the fall of the Assad regime with cautious joy as the Islamic Republic of Iran is expelled from Syria. IDF forces capture strategic Syrian locations after local militants mount an attack on UN forces in the Demilitarized Zone of the 1974 Israel-Syria armistice line. Turkey asserts that it expects an orderly transition of power in Damascus, which is inclusive to all religions and denominations. Shifting sands in the Middle East culminated with a geostrategic earthquake when the 63 years rule of the Assad regime abruptly ended when ousted President Bashar al-Assad fled for his life as the Turkish-backed Syrian National Army, Jaish al-Watani, in close cooperation with the jihadist Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, from the north, as well as local militants from Sweda and Deraa governorates from the south, captured the Syrian capital Damascus. Israel closely monitored the rapid advances by the anti-Assad forces on all fronts, stressing that the IDF stands at the ready for any plausible contingency.
We must conduct a situational assessment every few hours. At this cadence, every event here defines the new standard and causes changes. In order to understand developments, we are monitoring the situation very closely with all our intelligence gathering capabilities. The primary focus is on observing Iran's movements and interests, which is our top priority. The secondary focus is on local factions who are taking control of the area, assessing their actions, behavior, and deterrence levels, and ensuring they do not mistakenly direct their actions toward us. If such confusion does arise, there is an offensive response, backed by very strong defensive responses. We must be prepared both offensively and defensively.
While Israel bolstered its presence along its border with Syria, Syrian militants mounted an attack against a United Nations post within the Demilitarized Zone of the 1974 armistice line. Consequently, IDF forces engaged the militants, assisting the United Nations Disengagement Observer Force, or UNDOF, which lack heavy weaponry, in repelling the attack. Meanwhile, following a situational assessment by Jerusalem's top political and security brass that was made in response to the entry of armed Syrian militants into the demilitarized border zone with Israel, the IDF deployed forces into a number of strategic locations necessary for Israel's defense, which aims to ensure the safety of the communities of the Golan Heights and the citizens of Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who, alongside Defense Minister Israel Katz, toured Israel's border with Syria, stressed that the capture of Syrian territory was a temporary act of prudence.
This is a historic day for the Middle East. The collapse of the Assad regime, the tyranny in Damascus, offers great opportunity, but also is fraught with significant dangers. This collapse is a direct result of our forceful action against Hezbollah and Iran, Assad's main supporters. It set off a chain reaction of all those who want to free themselves from this tyranny and its oppression. But it also means we have to take action against possible threats. One of them is the collapse of the Separation of Forces Agreement from 1974 between Israel and Syria. This agreement held for 50 years. Last night it collapsed. The Syrian army abandoned its positions. We gave the Israeli army the order to take over these positions to ensure that no hostile force embeds itself right next to the border of Israel. This is a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement is found.
The Israeli premier continued by highlighting that Jerusalem seeks to foster peaceful relations with the separate Syrian sectors, with chief focus on the Druze of Sweda governorate, who have close links to the Druze community in Israel.
Equally, we send a hand of peace to all those beyond our border in Syria, to the Druze, to the Kurds, to the Christians, and to the Muslims who want to live in peace with Israel. We're going to follow events very carefully. If we can establish neighborly relations and a peaceful relations with the new forces emerging in Syria, that's our desire. But if we do not, we'll do whatever it takes to defend the state of Israel and the border of Israel.
Defense Minister Israel Katz, for his part, seized the opportunity to highlight the dire implications that emerged out of the fall of the Assad regime, which essentially dealt a crippling blow to Iran's so-called Ring of Fire along Israel's northern front and effectively isolated the Lebanese-Iranian proxy Hezbollah.
The fall of Assad is a severe blow to the Iranian axis of evil, which has set itself the goal of bringing about the destruction of the state of Israel. The tentacles of the octopus are being severed one by one. We have come here to state clearly that we are determined to provide security to the communities of the Golan Heights. We have instructed the IDF, the Prime Minister and I, with the approval of the Cabinet, to seize the buffer zone and control strategic points to ensure the protection of all Israeli communities in the Golan Heights, Jewish and Druze, so that they are not exposed to threats from the other side. We are determined not to allow a return to the situation of October 6th, neither in the Golan Heights nor anywhere else.
It is important to highlight that while Syria's rebel forces were set to conquer Damascus, Israel launched a significant aerial campaign targeting numerous abandoned installations of the Assad regime, to include the Syrian military's surface-to-air capabilities, sophisticated surface-to-surface missiles, and locations in which stockpiles of lethal biological munitions were believed to be stored, a move which Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar stressed was crucial to guarantee the preservation of Israel's national security interests.
The only interest we have is the security of Israel and its citizens. That's why we attacked strategic weapon systems, for example, remaining of chemical weapons, long-range missiles and rockets, in order that they will not fall in the hands of extremists.
Jerusalem's top diplomat, who made these remarks to the Foreign Press Corps in Israel, went on to voice his anger over Turkish-backed Syrian National Army onslaught on the predominantly Kurdish YPG forces in the town of Manbij.
The attacks on the Kurds, as we saw yesterday in Manbij, must be stopped. It's a commitment of the international community towards those who fought bravely against ISIS and won against ISIS, and it's also a commitment for the future of Syria, because the Kurds are stabilizing force in this country. We have a connection, and we discuss this matter with the American administration as much as with other states.
It is important to explain that the Kurdish YPG militia is the largest and most potent force which operates within the framework of the US-led Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, as part of Operation Inherent Resolve that is tasked with combating the Islamic State. However, Turkey regards the YPG as an extension of the PKK, a communist terrorist group that is internationally designated as such by the United States, European Union, Israel, and a number of other nations globally. And while there remains to be a difference of opinion between Washington and Ankara regarding the nature of the YPG, over the course of the past 24 hours, Turkish-backed Syrian forces captured the Syrian border town of Manbij, forcing the Kurdish YPG to retreat. Meanwhile, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, in a press conference on the sidelines of the Doha conference in Qatar, voiced Ankara's hope for the volatile situation in Syria to stabilize and stressed the requirement for all Syrian refugees to return to their homeland.
As of this morning, Syria has reached a stage where the Syrian people will shape the future of their own country. Today, there is hope. The Syrian people cannot achieve this alone. The international community must support the Syrian people. Turkey, attaches great importance to the national unity, stability, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Syria and the well-being of the Syrian people. Thereby, millions of Syrians who were forced to leave their homes can return to their land. The new administration must be established in an orderly manner. The principle of inclusiveness must never be compromised. There must never be a desire for revenge.
Ankara's top diplomat amid broad concerns that the Sunni Muslim jihadists would target Syrian minorities, to include the Christian and Druze in particular, stressed that while Turkey is committed to fighting terror groups such as the PKK and Islamic State, it is also committed to ensure that non-Sunni Muslims are treated equally under the future regime in Damascus. Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. Since TV7 Israel is exclusively donation-based, your support is vital for the sustainability of our operations here in Jerusalem. Therefore, if you're blessed by our productions, please consider prescribing a donation. You can do so via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. Separately, I would like to encourage you, pray for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. Jonathan Hassan wishing you a Shavua Mevorach, and God willing, we will see you during our next update. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.